we go. Welcome back, my lords, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this podcast finds you well. I'm sorry, first of all, if I sound rough. I am getting over the most egregious of illnesses, man flu. I believe it's known colloquially as from around the world. Nothing fatal, just large doses of moaning and complaining on my part. But with that in mind, we are going to be talking today about how we all have essentially reduced our concept of awareness down to crowdsourcing visual data strains, right? And one of the links that you'll find in the description below when this goes out as part of the finished product is a data map for parts of London where you are most likely to get your phone stolen. Right? Which is interesting, that our awareness of the world around us is apparently that small that we need to have a visualized concept crowdsourced in order to tell us where to go and where not to go, that we can only access through here rather than looking up. Bob, what do you make of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did the post on LinkedIn about this week because it's one every 7 minutes, I think, a phone is stolen in London, and it got me thinking about are there people who are naturally victims, and is it because of the way they present themselves? And this links into something which I did years ago at university, looking at this particular subject. And it's very much a East versus West thing, because what we think about and talk about, but we don't talk about it enough, is presence.
Absolutely.
Or as they say in the East, aura.
Yes.
And I believe that we all have a personal field around us, which shrinks or enlarges depending on how we feel and how we present ourselves. I put this to the test this morning, actually. I've been out this morning and I was in a busy town centre. So I decided to walk straight, be very confident, make a confident pose, make myself as big as possible. And lo and behold, people got out of my way as I was walking along the pavement. I didn't have to walk round anyone. They parted to let me through. So I think there is some mileage in this. I think that it's we have this personal force field or a presence or whatever you want to call it. And so by default, we can be streamed as victims or aggressors.
I mean, it's absolutely right, and the reason that I fear that contributes to this. Granted, it might be a small dose of hyperbole, calling it an awareness pandemic, but the amount of people I personally have seen nearly walk into traffic because they can't stop staring at their phone. This might be getting to a pandemic kind of level. And it seems to be that there is a misdiagnosis of where the fault is. And if we look at it from my polar profiling method, you've got people, objects, locations, actions, and reasoning. And the reasoning that this article seems to be putting forward is that it is the location that is the problem, right? And if you think about the wider issue that addresses as parts of questions, are we saying that more criminals just congregate in that area? Or there is more of a specific type of thing in that area? Is that just a misappropriation of statistics? What are we saying here by default? Or is it more likely that the actions, as you put forward, by the people with their objects, make this specific type of crime more likely because of the trend that people are having through a lack of presence in what it is that they do, through a lack of awareness of what it is that they do? And I've seen that people have started. I say people, businesses, just because I don't know who they are. Will long cords, like you get a lanyard for your ID badge at work. There's now long cords that you can get for your phone. When alternatively, the solution to that is presents. Right? If you're wandering down the street, how important is the doom scrolling that you're doing at that particular stage? And what kind of a behavior is the individual learning by default? It's like a kind of attachment disorder almost to the device. There was a line that Andrew Scott uttered in one of the Black Mirror episodes. It was one of the poorer Black Mirror episodes when Netflix started throwing a lot of money at it. And it was the sky could turn purple and you would never notice because you refused to look up. And that's the idea that is translating out. If you haven't got any presence about you, you're going to bump into things. Right? There's a proprioceptive awareness, excuse me, of the house that you live in. Right? You walk through your kitchen, your office, your garage, wherever it is, however many times a day that you do. But the second autopilot steps in, or too much going on here, for whatever legitimate reason it might be, that's when you step on the upturned plug, or stub your toe on the coffee table, or miss the door handle that's right in front of you 7 times. Right? These are the elements that iterate out purely because you're not actually there. And this is the thing that we're looking to bring to the fore. Right? So how do people practice presence? How do they go about doing that?
Well, I think firstly, going back to the map you talked about, there is something to be said about locations, because one of the locations was the City of London, which is mainly a business district where people, and if you looked at the breakdown of when phones were stolen, they predominantly were stolen around lunch times, early mornings, and late afternoons, which is when people are coming and going from work. And so what these people want to do is to get them when they're open, because if they're closed and you've got adequate security, then they can't get into them. So they snatch them off you when you're using them in the street. So I think the location has got something to do with it, although it's not the whole thing. Is that's when people are coming and going and likely to be on their phone to tell someone they're arriving or going, I suppose, or at lunchtime speaking to friends to reach agreement where to meet. Presence itself is something you can teach. It's not a natural thing. For some people, it is a natural thing, but for a lot of people, it isn't. And it was brought home to me the other day. I quite like to watch First Dates sorry, not First Dates, Married at First Sight.
Okay.
There's a UK version on at the moment, and it came home to me that one woman has suddenly discovered about 3 weeks into it or something that her husband isn't in it for the right reason, and she broke down and said to the others, "Why is it I always attract these men?" And so the answer to that is because you come over as a victim, love. You want it too much, you show too much, you open up too much, and predators love that sort of thing. They can then manipulate you. And I think that this is not a spoken thing. It is a spoken thing, but it is mainly the first time people see you. They can judge the aura that you're sending off, the confidence, the lack of confidence, the neediness, the lack of space you take up. All these sort of things in that context mean something. The fact, like I say, if you're the type of person who is timidly walking around people and moving across the pavement to get out of the way for people, that's how these people pick you out. Because if we're saying that they're snatching people's phone in the street, there's either two things. They're purposely looking for people who are just using their mobile phone, or they are typing people. Now, I would say that they're less likely to steal a mobile phone of a like a guy who's presenting as a rugby player,
Mm,
very aware of himself, than someone who's very timidly walking along the street. And they're very adept at this
mm,
because that's what they are. That's what they can pick out. They're predators,
yeah.
and just like in the animal world, in our world, they can spot the weak links.
Mm, mm. Well, one of the things that relates to this that I was first made aware of when going through the situational awareness training many years ago was the Grayson Stein study of victim selection, and
Yeah,
it was searching for this apparent what are they looking for? Is there a kind of victim-esque behavior or a more
yeah,
appropriate person or identity? And some of the details that came out of the study itself are essentially that these predators are looking for disconnection. And disconnection from somebody leaving a tube station in the middle of London is going to be worlds apart from somebody walking the dog in the middle of the Peak District, right? Because they're two very different contexts, two very different situations. But these are the areas that they're looking for. Is the walk a little bit aimless and up in the clouds, or is it down in their phone and not aware of the world around them? Whereas if somebody is head up, shoulders back, regardless of whether they are the size of a rugby player or not, they are less likely to be focused on by the predators in this environment because you emanate connection to where it is that you are. From neuroscience, we would call this a perceptual template. And this is the perceptual template of confidence, connection, awareness, the acknowledgement of the world around you. Think of the inverted properties of that. It can be somebody quite timidly, making their way through the situation, but it can just be as easily somebody who's off in the clouds. Either way, the through line that connects those two ideas and all of the grey area in between is a lack of connection to right there, right
yeah,
now, wherever that particular there is. And
yeah,
these are the people that are being selected, and it's horrible. Just for the
yeah,
sake of sending a couple of texts, however important. You stave off your awareness to do some other things. Boom, your phone's gone. And this is the diagnostic that we're looking at. It's not about saying avoid this particular area, because if you work there, you can't. It's more about the acknowledgement of your own personal safety when you're doing certain things. Now, is that to encourage neuroticism? God, no. It's just more to encourage a little bit of accountability and a little bit of connection to what it is that you're doing right there. And the thing that I always say to people when we're going through situational awareness sessions is if you are having a conversation with your loved one, whomever that is, whether it's your mother, father, kids, husband, wife, whatever. If you're having a conversation and it's important, how likely are you to go mid conversational stream? And the answer are words to the effect of, well, it's very unlikely. Okay,
yeah,
so why do you deem that to be okay when you're walking the streets and having to navigate traffic? Some people still do it while they're driving. These are the questions that are being addressed for the sake of your own awareness of the environments that you act in.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it takes me back to thinking about years and years ago. This would be when I was in the police, working with a plain clothes unit, and we
Mm.
were targeting people who were stealing handbags from
Yeah.
pubs. And so we set up on a pub and we put a couple of people in the pub who were there as decoys. They made it easy for their bags to be stolen, hoping that one of these people would take the bait and then we could do the necessary afterwards. And it never happened. We saw them go in because we had an idea who it was. We saw them go in, but they didn't take the bait. They just came straight back out again. And they were caught later on. And I asked them that question. why didn't you steal from that pub? And they said, well, because you were in there. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, you stood out like a sore thumb. Now, these people were not standing out. They were part of the crowd, and it was a crowded pub, but they could spot them. And so what made them stand out? Well, they looked like coppers, didn't they? But they didn't. But they could spot it
Yeah.
because their predatory instincts told them. So it's going back to the reptile brain. It's, don't do this because there's coppers in here. There's something not right. And we all get that feeling. And that feeling is because, you could say we pick up on people's presence. When we talk about first impressions are important, be smiling,
Yeah.
be open, etc., etc. That is, to me, this is not interconnected. Now, before we go off, because I'm mindful that we're only on for 30 minutes, one of the studies I want to bring to people's attention is one by a guy called R. Cooper, and it's
Okay.
called Perceiving the Human Energy Field from 2003. It's openly available on the internet, and he talks about something which I'd never heard of before, and I don't know whether it was something that he originated, and I'm going to have to read it because it's quite difficult
Do
to
it.
say. It's actually IPA is the acronym for it, but it's interpretive phenomenological analysis, and that is the study of people's energy fields.
Interesting.
It's not. It's not very. It's only the study he's done is only with a very small amount of people, but he breaks it down into the different areas that he looks at and what he thinks attracts us or pushes us away from people, and how the field of energy between us orchestrates that.
It's interesting. Like one of the one of the reasons me and my wife think that we are so good together is when we first met, we both achieved that level of, if everyone will forgive me of saying, of having our shit together. We were so sick of meeting people that didn't.
Yeah,
And having to accommodate for that in some way, that we put out this, well, all right, I'm not necessarily in need of someone. I would like someone, but here are my standards, and these are the connections. And I think it's very important to say, because we've touched on some spiritual sounding areas. It's not spiritual in the sense of the great ethereal unknown. When you look at what your brain does, the common misconception is that we only use 10% of our brains, when the actual
yeah,
truth is that the brain does that much. We only understand or comprehend 10% of it.
yeah,
That's the misunderstanding of the origin of that from the paper that it was written in. And the same applies here when you think about all of the information that you might be processing at any one moment from their presence, or their aura, or whatever other label you want to attach to it within that first impression. You're processing that much information. You might just not be consciously aware of all of it at that particular time, that leads you to go, well, I don't like her, or I don't like him. We're saying bring that into your presence when you're moving locations. Bring that idea into your commutes, if it is, right? Pick your head up and acknowledge the world around you a little bit. And much like if you or others stand out as victims or coppers in a bar when they're not dressed like coppers, these pirates, as I think they've got like a porch pirate terminology. I think that's the label that's going around. I'd need fact checking on that. But these guys and gals who pull up on their little electric scooters and grab things out of people's hands and pedal off, they too will stand out, because their physicality, their awareness, their connection to the environment will not make sense with everything else that's going on. And when you see some of the CCTV deployments, these people are doing like little circles, like little sharks, circling their prey. They're going round
yeah,
and round, and all you really need to do is look up just to acknowledge. Every time we go to London, me and my wife, I'm always on the outside by the cars, not because I'm like Captain Tradition and, it's the 1890s and we have to link as we walk down the street. That's just habit. But I whenever she gets her phone out to find directions for where we're going, she looks at her phone and I look around. That's the deployment that we have, so that if we have something that we need to do, there is still presence in that environment. Just she can turn hers down, so I turn mine up, and we're both still okay in that particular situation. It doesn't take a great amount of mental effort to be able to do things like that. And if it is that you want your devices remaining safer, just bring some of these ideas into your day-to-day. Just nudge them in, create habits around them, and your situational awareness will skyrocket.
Yeah. Here's an easy way to remember it. We call it presence. So by presence, think, I need to be present in that moment, and I need to present myself in a way that's going to make people feel that I'm confident and that it won't be easy to do whatever they want to do.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, and making effective use of the flaws in the English language as well. I've with learning the languages, I've always been an advocate of the fact that English is stupid, and now it isn't. It makes sense and can be deployed as a useful safety acronym. When you think about it, predators don't select from a menu and go, that one. They browse what it is that's in front of them to choose the most likely applicant towards their heinous deeds, whatever the predator in mind that is. If it is that it's just a phone being stolen or something much more severe, it is the watching for applicable behaviour and applicable levels of disconnection that they can deploy whatever activity it is that they are fond of doing. If we combat that by taking more accountability of our own presence in a moment, and this isn't just an old man rant about technology, which I'm quite fond of doing, but it's more to say, okay, you have to reply to a message. Fine. If that's paramount, how? Stand still. Turn in and face the shops if it is that you have to, right? Send it quickly. Make sure you only reply from your watch if you've got a smartwatch. Step inside a coffee shop just to send the message so you're out the way of the foot traffic. These considerations might seem unnecessary, but an ounce of prevention is always going to be better than a pound of cure. Always. Every time. And these little behaviours and habits that you can drill contribute to other areas, because it's a thinking pattern about your awareness. It's a thinking pattern about your presence in a moment. If you're considerate of yourself enough to step inside a coffee shop just to send a text message, that idea emanates and builds behaviours from it. And these are some of the things that come from a great awareness of your environments, both of the literal environments themselves and the people within it. So, Bob, what are your final thoughts on this, sir?
Final thoughts are what I just said a minute ago. When you're in a public area, be present and present in the right way. And just finally, very much tied to this is another piece of research, which I'll just say, Siegel from 2012, The Developing Mind, How Relationships and the Brain Interact to Shape Who We Are. Give you a good idea about how we present ourselves. Just think of it like this, is that you cannot stop crime happening, and you cannot stop a criminal who's intent on interacting with you, but you can make it more difficult, because like everything, they'll go for the weakest link. Don't make yourself the weakest link.
Beautiful. I'm not adding anything to that other than to say, if you got anything out of today's episode, make sure you subscribe through whatever channels it is that you take podcasts in by. and we'll see you next week for another stream. Alright guys, take it easy.